Hey everyone, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Lead Your Movement. I'm Angelique Ruers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, where we are the leading experts in helping other experts to win and work with corporate clients. And this is our weekly show where we talk to amazing business leaders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who are using their businesses and their organizations in order to drive positive change in the world. This, though, is a special episode because if you're watching this, especially if you're watching it as we're airing it on a Wednesday afternoon, I am on vacation right now. Whatever the heck vacation actually means in this COVID pandemic world, I don't know, but I am certainly unplugged at the moment. So we're pre-recording and sharing this episode with you, a very special episode that's really content rich and designed for all of those experts in our community who are looking to make the move from working with either one-on-one clients, individuals who are their clients and having that one-on-one type of business, or who are stuck in a paid by the hour type business model. And you're looking to move to have bigger impact in the world through your business and also tie that to getting free of just the one-on-one or the hourly work by going after those high-end corporate client engagements. And if there's one person that I would be really ready to have this conversation with in a really impactful way, if there's one person that I could talk to about this, it would be our very own Executive Vice President, Phil Dyer, who this is his first appearance on the show, so it's fantastic to have him. Let me tell you a little bit about Phil in case you don't know. He is, as I said, our EVP here at the Corporate Agent, and he has been for almost 10 years now. It's been an incredible journey that we've had over the last decade. He is a speaker, consultant, serial entrepreneur who has advised thousands of Fortune Global 2000 companies, government agencies, universities, NGOs, nonprofits, CEOs, senior executives, and small business owners over the last 25 plus years. He's worked across the globe, including in the UK, the Netherlands, Ireland, Italy, Germany, Spain, and Canada. He's a graduate of the prestigious United States Military Academy at West Point and a former Army captain. He's delivered more than 800 business and financial presentations to audiences worldwide, and we actually could probably update that to over 1,200 now. Phil is also the co-author of Victory, 7 Entrepreneur Success Strategies for Veterans, as well as the #1 Amazon bestseller, Wonder Women, How Western Women Will Save the World. Damn straight. His clients have increased year-over-year sales by up to 300%, reduced turnover by up to 50%, and decreased miscommunication and team conflict up to 70%. And in addition to all of that and all of the amazing work he does with us here at the Corporate Agent, he also owns a financial planning business that, Phil, how long have you owned that business as well?
Well, I've been in the financial planning space since 1996 and the current iteration of my business since 2002.
And you've seen multiple recessions, you've seen multiple market downturns, you've seen .com bubbles burst, you've seen the whole Internet of Things and the whole transformation of the small business world. So you've seen all of that from not just the consulting angle, but the financial planning side of things with small business owners as well.
I have, and it's been a fascinating journey. So when I tend not to get too spun up about a lot of the stuff that's kind of going on short term because as you said, I've been through multiple recessions, seen multiple kind of financial meltdowns, and you kind of look at it from all angles, both kind of being in business and then observing and analyzing business from externally when looking to helping clients make decisions on investments they're making. So it's been kind of a fun ride. And I can't believe we're at a decade though. It seems like it's kind of just gone like in the blink of an eye. When we first started working together way back 10 years ago, it seems like it was only yesterday sometimes.
Well, we joke sometimes. It's like once you come into the Angelique vortex, you can't get back out. But we'll have to. We'll do an episode at some point on sort of the way that all developed and came about, because I think it's a great case study in the evolution of business relationships. And so often people look at our, lengthy business relationship that we've had and how we've worked together so well over the last decade. And they kind of want to jump right to the place that, we've been in the last couple of years, but it was really a journey in and of itself. And I think people, don't necessarily want to kind of do their due diligence and try working with different folks and really figure out, how it's going to work best. So we'll have to do an episode on that. Today, though, I want to talk about something that is going on for a lot of folks. And I suspect with the number of people who are going to be leaving their jobs over the next, we know the fall is going to be filled with companies scaling back and making layoffs. A lot of people are going to have severance packages. They're going to use those severance packages in order to create their own self-employed type businesses. They're probably going to make a lot of the mistakes that I made when I did that when I left my job back in 2006. So, we know that there's going to be a lot of people moving into that sort of self-employed place. We also know, just from our constant sort of talking to our community and what's going on for them and the thousands of business owners we've worked with, that there are a lot of people, Phil, who are really stuck in their business because their business model is that situation where they've created a job for themselves. They're either working one-on-one with clients a lot, or they're paid by the hour. And, you've always had a great expression for that, which is that time money wall that people hit. They can't. And so talk a little bit about that. And typically when we start that revenue place that we start to really see people hit that time money wall.
Yeah. So typically, just to kind of expand a little bit on what you shared a little bit or a couple moments ago. People, especially if they're coming out of a corporate or they've been in corporate and they've kind of jumped out to start their own business, is they really do either create that job for themselves, or they'll frequently go basically back in and what we term a staff augmentation role. So they're just doing kind of what they were doing, but they're doing it, inside the business. They're still not at the beck and call like they used to be, but there's still some restrictions, especially from a time standpoint on what they can do. And what we find typically is that people who structure their business that way are going to hit that time money wall where they're out of time and they really can't make any more money unless they're just willing to work 70 and 80-hour weeks, which, by the way, is one of the reasons a lot of people left corporate, is they were tired of working the 70 and 80-hour weeks. Typically somewhere between the high 100s, so the 175, 180. We've seen folks that can get to 250, 300. But that really is a stretch. And what we usually find is that they get there to that 250 to 300 range because they're just an all-out sprint. But once they get there, they actually can't sustain it. And they typically will then backslide into that mid to high 100s to low 200s range. And they may have like a part-time assistant. They have a little bit of help, but everything is basically based on what they personally can deliver. And I think more importantly, what they can personally see. And if you're already working hard, if you're already really busting your butt, which a lot of the folks in our community are they're experts, they're very smart, they're very dedicated, and they're very hard workers, then if you're already, burning the midnight oil, feeling like you're on a hamster wheel, you won't even see kind of bigger opportunities emerge because you're so, your brain is just kind of so full with everything that's going on that you literally can't take a time out, take a breath, step back and see, oh gosh, I could go do this over here. This is a really opportunity, because they're too focused and they're working too hard.
Yeah. And then of course there's the feast or famine that comes out of it as well. We see something that's really common, and we'd like to talk about this because you might be sitting there going, that's exactly what I'm doing. And you might be beating yourself up about it, feeling like you're the only person doing this. It's so much more common than you might realize. We see folks create feast or famine for themselves. They might have one or two clients that they're working with, and those clients are really sort of all consuming. But then let's say a decision maker leaves, or that decision maker gets laid off as part of a downsizing, or a company as part of their cost control methods. When things get tight, like they are now in some companies, they put a moratorium on any outside vendors, independent contractors, things like that. And so very quickly those go away. I'll never forget, Phil, I was in New York City probably about 6 years ago. I was speaking at a conference up there. It was a really fun conference. Loved New York, loved being there. And I ran into this woman. I'd just gotten off stage. And actually, this was right after I got I should have gone to the hospital. One woman tackled me. I've never been tackled, you guys, in all of the years that I've spoken. I'm always sort of mobbed after I get off stage. But this one event, this woman was so excited about what we were talking about. She ran straight at me, knocked me down. I actually cracked my head into a concrete floor. I'm not even kidding. So I get up and they put ice on my head and I'm kind of off in the corner. This other woman comes up to me. And I won't mention, her name or the brand she was working with, but essentially for 3 years, a major brand made up about 80% of her entire revenue. And she really took that for granted. And they had just pulled the plug on working with her. And so pretty much overnight, 80% of her revenue evaporated. So we see that happen as well. But mostly it's also the grind piece of it that, just working. And you can't really build freedom into the business. Michael Gerber really talks about this in the E-Myth Revisited. He does such a good job of talking about, when you're the center of everything in the business, it's all reliant on you. It's like every morning you get up and it's another Groundhog Day. It's very difficult to have that impact. So we've really have been helping with people with this for about a decade now. One of the places we do it the most is in our Platinum program, which you run for us, which is a small group of about 10 to 12 business owners at a time, because this is really detailed work. This is not cookie cutter type work. In the online marketing space, you've got formulas for landing pages and shit like that. When you're building a business that's around your expertise and your consulting and you're out there working with organizations, it's much more custom. And so I wanted to bring you on the show today to actually talk through some of the big pivot points that people make. So they're going from maybe being a coach and they have one-on-one coaching clients. Those people often work inside of companies, but it's the individual who's hiring them, not necessarily the company that's hiring them. So you've got those folks. And then you've got the staff aug people, the independent contractor people, and then the service providers who are getting paid. Maybe it's a copywriter, a PR person, a branding person, a website person, an influencer marketing person who's doing all of this work hourly. And then they come in, they'll work with you, Phil, in Platinum, and they'll start to shift out of that and they'll make some key pivots. And I wanted to walk through what some of those pivots are that people make as they're breaking free from sort of the self-employed, created a job for themselves, to creating a business and actually having these high-end engagements, these multi-six-figure engagements with clients, and not putting all their eggs in one basket so that they, have diversification. So one of the first things, and you kind of gave a little preview of this, a little spoiler of this, is being able to actually see larger engagements and what those larger engagements look like. It's actually one of the things we tell people, look, we want to make up an engagement that's 100,000. I forget the exact numbers you like to give them, but walk me through that and what happens for people mentally as they're trying to because there's a lot of stuck points along that journey of saying, well, I don't even know what $180,000 client engagement looks like.
Right, and that's actually so when we kind of spring this on them in Platinum, that's the most common response. It's like I wouldn't even know where to start with this. I don't know what this would look like. I don't understand how I would going out about doing this. And one of the fascinating things in this is I'm so honored because our clients, they are smart and most of them have fantastic experience. I mean, just they're brilliant folks. They've done amazing things, but they never ever actually really looked at it, through the lens of their business. So a lot of times what we find is they've led big projects. They've been involved in major transformations inside of organizations, or led critical revenue projects, or rescued critical revenue projects, or swooped in at the last minute to turn around a client-facing deliverable that had gone sideways, and the company was getting ready to get hit with like $1 million penalty because they weren't going to deliver on time. All these type of things. But because they're so kind of nose to the grindstone and so really narrowly focused on what they're doing right now, they forget about that. We call it small business owner amnesia. So a lot of times it's actually there in their background, but they're not looking at it through the lens of the business. So they're literally not seeing it in their background. But then when we look at it on the company level, because they're working with one leader, or they're working with one team, or they're doing in that staff augmentation role, they can't really see the full picture. They can't really see the possibility of what's there. And so what we do is usually gently, sometimes not so gently, kind of pull them back so they can get a wide angle shot on it and really look at things from like, oh, okay, I'm doing this here. And then, well, and I usually do this over here, and then I do this over here. And so one of the things we do is actually walk through with them and help them when they get stuck on, who would I go to? What's this going to look like? Are there phases that we need to be doing? Because frequently a lot of this stuff, it's in their head. They know how to do it. They don't know how to articulate it. But virtually everyone that we work with in the Platinum program actually has their own proprietary framework, system, approach, whatever you want to call it, to helping do what they do, helping organizations fix a problem. So they've got that. They actually do things in phases without kind of knowing it. And part of what we do in Platinum is really kind of is pull that out of them, number one. And then number two is really help them see the big picture and lay it out for, this is where we'd start. This is what kind of looks like in the middle. And then this is how you would kind of wrap up this particular engagement, and then set the stage, or craft the springboard to then go into the next engagement with the organization. And people are just amazed at like how we're able to do that and pull that out. And basically what we're doing is we do a deep dive in their background. We're really looking at what their expertise is, and we're uncovering all kinds of hidden gems that are already there. And then we're just really reorganizing that and putting it together in a way that they can see the bigger picture, and they can actually be like, oh, I can actually do this. Or in most cases, I've actually done this before. I just haven't looked at it or put it together in this particular way.
Or put it together all together. So it's been
all together, right? They've done pieces of it. They've done a piece here, and they've done a piece there. But when we look at the totality of their experience and their background, it's becomes like readily apparent for us, and usually in pretty short order. Like, you've got all the components. You've just done them piecemeal, and now we're going to put it together in an integrated fashion, in a way that you can help, number one, solve bigger problems for the organization, and that you can also get paid for the full range of your expertise kind of at every step of the way. And it's really kind of that act of kind of pulling them back, getting that wide angle shot so they can really see the full picture, and then having things reflected back to them. In fact, I think, in the private work that we do, and then also with the Platinum group, one of the comments we hear most frequently is, I feel really seen. Like seen for my experience, seen for my expertise, seen what I can bring to the table. And that's because our approach is really kind of the anti-formula, basically kind of formula in a can for success. We go way the opposite direction. But I think it really makes a difference, because every person's background, experience, knowledge, how they're put together from a cognitive standpoint, what they really like to do, that's really unique to every single person. And so by trying to force somebody into a formula, this is how I did it, and this is how you can do it too, it just really doesn't work. It really has to be individually structured and focused on that particular expert.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, with the small business amnesia, a lot of times folks are forgetting things that they did in their career 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago.
I was going to say 5 months ago, 5 weeks ago in some cases. Yeah, it's pretty ubiquitous.
Yeah, and so if you're not bringing all of that to the table and you're not putting it together, then you really end up in a very reactive situation, actually. So one of the big things, if you're trying to make this shift from one-on-one work or hourly work, and you want to have these higher end engagements, 50,000, 100,000, 180,000, 250,000 type of engagements, the first thing is you really have to actually see what you could do. That you probably aren't going to sell. I mean, it does happen, but typically if you're mapping this out, or we're helping you map this out, you've got it mapped out of what it looks like. about 75% of that will sort of remain intact. And then as you're having conversations with clients, you'll modify 20 to 25% to customize it to them. But there are some really interesting universal laws at work in what we're talking about here, from the perspective that you actually can't create anything in the physical world unless you can first see it here. So you have to see it to be able to create it. And really, if you haven't done that work to look at what is an engagement, a soup to nuts, end to end strategic engagement for an organization, where you actually get to start at the beginning of the problem and develop the solution and execute the solution and do continuous improvement with a client and really bring all of that together. If you haven't envisioned what that looks like, then you can't manifest it. You're not ever going to create it in your business. You have to see it before you can create it. And if you can't easily see it, then whether it's our help or someone else's help, you need to get help on envisioning what that looks like. Because once you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, I can totally do that. And then typically, to your point, Phil, people start saying, wait a second, I've done that before.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's really the big thing, is that 90+% of the time people are like, oh wait, like I've actually done this already. I've done every single element of this. I've done every single element. I haven't looked at it this way. I haven't put it together this way, but oh my gosh, like this is totally doable. This actually would be easy. This would be fun. This would be exciting. And then like all of a sudden, like all of the, I don't know how, and the scariness factor and all that stuff gets removed, because people like actually the blinders come off. Or I had a client tell me years ago, probably well over 10 years ago now, that you're like an industrial strength bottle of Windex. Like I feel like I'm looking through this this really opaque window, and I can sort of kind of see elements of see pieces of what I really want, and I totally want to get there, but it's not clear. Everything's out of focus. And basically, you just come along and a couple spurt, basically Windex, just a little bit of Windex spray, and then wipe it away, and then all of a sudden now I've got clarity. I can actually see it. And to your point, if you can't see it, you actually can't really imagine it. But then it's really, oh, I've done this and I've done this. Oh my gosh, like this will actually be easy and this will be fun. And it's so rewarding from my standpoint to like see the light bulb go off and see the shift happen. And then what's even more exciting is to see what people can do with their business. Like once all of this comes in, they get clarity around it and everything comes into focus.
Yeah. I really get excited personally, a lot of fulfillment and excitement when we see this happen for folks, because, and then I'm going to change gears here on another issue that comes up for folks, but something happened for me when I left, corporate and I started my business. So, I was at a young age, I had really advanced pretty quickly inside the corporate space, inside of Fortune 500 companies. I was really very lucky for my very first corporate job to be working directly with a CEO of a company and all the C-suite. And that really stayed the course through my entire corporate career. I mean, I was in the boardrooms during our quarterly meetings of going over the financials, days and days and days of being in the boardroom, senior executives, and working directly with the CEO and the CFO and the CIO and having all of that access. And, I wore my power suits. I was, in the boardroom. I was flying, for one of my companies. I was flying on the corporate jet with one of the executives. I had this great, and I had all of this experience. I was involved in, industry analyst meetings. I put on an event for companies like Gartner and Forrester at the Waldorf in New York City, and did all of this stuff. And then I moved into the sort of the small business space, and I followed a lot of these blueprints and formulas that were out there. I kind of fell into what we sometimes call the online, the internet marketing blender that just spins you around. And I remember at one point I was sitting in a room. It's actually when I found you, Phil, and we happened to be sitting in the same room. And someone was going on and on about a business about RVs. And there's nothing wrong with RVs, but I'm sitting in the back of the room and I'm like, I have left, 12 plus years of experience, like back there somewhere. Like, what happened? How did I leave all of that experience on the table? I'm not using it in my business right now. what the hell just happened? Like, I didn't even know how I had gotten there. It was like I fell into the blender. I got so spun around, and I'm sitting there in this meeting, and I left the meeting to go sit outside to try to, because it was like this tidal wave of a realization. And so one of my favorite parts about helping people actually make that move into these higher end engagements is that it's that moment of realizing you can bring 15, 20, 25 years of your life back in a positive way. Because also I know we all have some scars from certain full-time jobs and things, some toxicity, but bringing all that good stuff back to the table and remembering the badasses that we were, that mojo, right, and that level of game that we can play at. And one of my things about some of the small business marketing space is just that it like talks down to small business owners instead of talking up to them and talking up to their experience and really what they're capable of. So,
well, but before we leave that, I just want to kind of share a quick anecdote. So, yeah. one of our current platinum members, came out of a really, really rich background in the corporate IT space, and working for major companies, the big consulting firms, and for state, basically big state agencies that had major transformation projects that they were doing, and he was basically the fire brigade. So when these critical infrastructure projects or these critical IT transformation projects inside of organizations got stuck, and it was going sideways, and it really looked like it was headed for disaster, like he was the one that they would basically pull in, and he was essentially operating in a staff augmentation role or glorified staff aug role, but he was the one that could see and understood how all the pieces worked, exactly where things went off track, and how to quickly get it back on track. And when he first came into Platinum, he was really just really looking at almost kind of replicating that role just in his own business. So really just kind of working the same thing he'd been doing, but just working over here. And so one of the things that emerged at our first retreat was, he's got the know-how, the experience, the background to put together like end-to-end major solutions that companies will pay, frankly, lots, and do pay lots and lots of money for. But more importantly, is he had all the contacts he needed, all the network he needed to really stand up his own boutique consulting firm and operate as the CEO, and then pull in the brilliant folks from his network, and over a 25-year period, where people had repeatedly said to him, if you ever decide to go out and do this, kind of do something on your own, I would love to come work for you. Like dozens and dozens and scores of people, but his field of view had been so narrow. Like, okay, I'm doing this here, and so I can only do this over here. And now he's got a target. The target in a relatively short order is to move really into a 7 to 8 figure boutique consulting firm as quickly as possible, because he can now see how all the pieces fit together. And he's so excited. I'm so thrilled for him. And he's a brilliant guy. And it was just like 95% of his knowledge, expertise, experience was kind of going to get left on the cutting room floor if he'd gone forward with kind of this very limited view of what he could potentially be doing.
Yeah, it's really amazing how our awareness precedes everything. It's like you've got to have the awareness. It's one of the reasons I think that not to get off into sort of mindset discussions here, but it's one of the reasons that people stay stuck, because what they're aiming for is actually the wrong thing. And so all the action and like the beating their head against the wall, it's part of it is that you're not even aiming at the right thing. And so that just undermines all your efforts to grow, because you're aiming in the wrong place. And so that's, that business that you're talking about could have easily been $150,000 a year, sort of just churning out hourly rates, charging by the hour, or it can be a multi-7 or even an 8-figure boutique consulting company that really is about bigger impact and freedom and scale and actually having a real business that's making money while you're on vacation somewhere because you've got a team, which is the perfect segue. So thank you for setting up my segue. So
I sensed it. I knew it.
So you knew that.
Right,
so I, we do have the telepathy thing sometimes.
We do.
So first of it is you want to get out of the hourly rate or the one-on-one rate. You've got to understand, you've got to see the larger vision, and you've got to see the larger engagements. What does that look like? And that's really important, by the way. As an aside, the heaviest lifting that you do in your small business is get a new client, right? So when you get that new client, you don't want that client spending $5,000 with you for a workshop or $12,000 with you to coach one of their problem managers and then being done working with you. You've done all this work to get to the decision maker table. You want them to work with you for months or years. And so in order to do that, you first have to have larger engagements that they can come into and be able to work with them over the long haul. And that's really, that's the goal here, right? Is that they're working with you. I think we're kind of a rarity in the small business consulting space in that our clients stay with us forever. Like our clients who come into our Velocity program, our clients they stay with us for years, like 5 years, 6 years. We have clients who've been with us 7 and 8 and 9 years. So we're somewhat of a rarity, but that doesn't usually happen in the small business space.
Right.
There's a lot of churn in that space. And so, but not in corporate, not when you're working with small enterprises, not when you're working with mid-market companies, not when you're working with colleges and universities. You really want to structure your business from the get-go that these clients are coming back to you year after year after year. Now, you can't do all of this yourself, though. If you're selling multi-six-figure engagements, you can't do it yourself. And so one of the other things, Phil, that's so critical as a pivot for these business owners who want to break out of the hourly rates is to build a bench. And a bench is very different than your team. So talk about, we use this concept of bench. Talk about what the bench is and how that really frees you up and allows you to break out of this hourly rate type of fees.
Right. So, I think the easiest thing to use as an analogy for the bench is really sports, right? Because when you think about a basketball team, there's 5 players on the court at any given time. And then if somebody's in foul trouble or somebody's not shooting very well or somebody keeps turning it over, the coach is going to turn to the bench and is going to, say, all right, Jones, you're up, go in and replace Smith. We need you to get in there and do X, whatever X, happens to be at that particular time. And, same thing in baseball and football and really every other sport. And so bench folks are people that are actually, number one, they're making money for you. So when they're working, you're making money. So that's the first thing. So they're not overhead. They're not kind of your support staff or your support team, but they're in there expanding the impact and really the footprint of what you can do inside of companies by applying their expertise under your approach, under your proprietary framework, in helping solve that bigger organizational problem. But they're bringing they're either can be either what we call a mini me, so somebody that really has a very similar background, experience, knowledge that can replace you in the service delivery role in one or more areas in an engagement, or they're bringing expertise that you don't have, but that's going to be critical to the success of the engagement, that come in to do something that is going to be integral to the success, but it's not something that is really in your bailiwick, really in your lane from an expertise, knowledge, experience standpoint. And the ability to kind of craft that team, put that team together where you got a couple of point guards and then you've got a couple of power forwards and you got a center, to use a basketball analogy, and they're all playing different roles, but they're all operating in a way, in a really organic way and in a really integrated, holistic way to deliver the solution to the client. That's what bench is. And with all due respect to my first big employer, the United States Army, they had ads a number of years ago, this whole Army of One ad that they were running, be an Army of One, that ain't how it works, number one. But number two is that's the way a lot of when folks first come in to work with us, they've been trying to operate like that. They've been trying to basically be this Army of One where they were doing all of the service delivery at every single level of the engagement. And just from a from a deliverable standpoint, you're going to run into that whole time money wall issue where you can't work any harder. You can't take any more engagements on. And the bench allows you to basically expand your impact, which I think is really crucial, expand your impact wider in the organization. It allows you to provide more complete solutions to challenges that are really vexing the leader, the senior leader or the organization, and really preventing them from accomplishing some critical goals. So you've got a more complete solution, you've got bigger impact, and oh, by the way, you're also going to make more money by doing less work. And one of the things that stuck with me for really decades in business, I heard it from a acquaintance years ago, and who runs a eight or nine figure business, is the less I work, the more money I make, because the bench and his minions and other folks are out there actually doing the service delivery. He's staying engaged at the top strategic level discussions with the C-suite or the business unit president or whoever that happens to be. But then he's got his, he's got his squad or his platoon that's out doing a lot of different things inside the organization to provide that bigger impact and that more complete solution for the client.
Yeah, I think, God, there's so many things I want to say about that. So one is, you said something at the beginning, I just want to go back and highlight, when your bench is in the game, they're making money for you. So we always want to draw a distinction that the bench is a profit center for your business. It's not a cost center for your business. And everything in your business is either a cost center or it's a profit center. So, things like virtual assistants, graphic designers, bookkeepers, your attorney, et cetera, those are cost centers. They're necessary, but they're cost centers. They're overhead for you. Your bench, you're only paying them when they're actually in the game. So, you're not typically putting them on payroll full time. I mean, you certainly can get to that point, but most people who want more of a lifestyle business, want some flexibility, don't want to carry a big overhead on full-time employees. The bench are independent contractors that go in the game when you need them, and that's when you're paying them, and you're paying them when you're getting paid. And so it's really a profit center. The more they're working, that means the more clients you have, that means the more money you're making. I think personally for me, some of like the things that when I discovered that model for myself, somewhat accidentally early on, because, it was 2006 into 2007, I was getting my business up and running. And I started taking on various projects and engagements with my clients. And I quickly hit that time money wall and thought to myself, one, this is just not going to cut it for me. I've got this time money wall. This is not going to cut it. The second thing is I almost got really fatigued, because it was like every time I won a client, that just meant more work for me. Right. So it was sort of like, I sometimes was like, do I even want to go after that opportunity? Do I even want to pursue that opportunity? Because I can make a lot of money, but shit, that's a lot of work. Can I do all of that by myself? The other part was it was isolating. And I think right now, especially during this pandemic where we're all sort of social distancing and there's been various degrees of lockdowns and things over time, that idea, that sense of being isolated, I think we can all relate to it right now. But one of the things is a lot of small business owners really operate best when they have other people to collaborate with. There's, having a strategy call with someone who's working on the same client as you. And people make the mistake all the time of thinking that they want a business partner. You don't. Trust me, you don't. And this idea that like the answer must be in having a business partner. That is not the answer. No. The answer is in having bench members that can come in. Now, people make all sorts of mistakes with this, with hiring bench.
Yeah, and I was going to say we have lived this personally. So both of us have kind of been down this road in business personally, but then we've also, in the decade that we've been plus now that we've been advising small business owners, we see it like time and time again that people they when they get the concept of bench and they're like, yes, that makes total sense, and I can totally see how it can expand impact, and I can solve bigger problems, and I can make more money. Great. And then they kind of get the bit between their teeth and then run out and start to try to pull the bench together without really understanding some of the critical success elements to doing it right from the get-go. And then they can get themselves in trouble. And so, that's one of the reasons that we ended up, putting together the bench workshop that we recently delivered, is just from kind of our school of hard knocks, and then all of the client situations that we've seen come up over the last decade. We really, kind of took a big step back, and then really looked at it, went in and kind of, lifted up the hood and really looked at, okay, where are folks, missing the mark, where are they going wrong, and really, put all that together and pull it together to do a full day workshop to really show folks, from soup to nuts, and on how to do this and how to do it effectively. And I've gotten so many notes, messages, comments from folks that were part of that just said that this was so incredibly helpful. It saved me ridiculous amounts of time and money. And now again, to that awareness point that you made earlier, now I can see how this can work. I can see how not only can it work, but how it can be very effective in helping me hit the revenue goals that I have, and also really doing the pieces of an engagement that I love to do, and that provides super high value to the client, while letting other folks bring their brilliance and do the stuff that either really it isn't worth it from a time money trade-off for me to be doing, or they're bringing expertise that I don't have, but that the client needs.
Or that you hate doing. You can do it, but you don't like doing it.
Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, that idea of, having other people that you're working with, I will say two of the huge mistakes I see people making with bench, and then we'll talk about something else here. But two of the big things I see is overpaying the bench, really not understanding just how much of a fee is really due to the marketing, business development, sales process, and also the client account management. Because whenever you have a client in your business, you're going back and forth. You've got to get a contract. You've got to do invoicing and billing. You might have to get set up in their billing system. You might have to carry business insurance to work with them. You have to make sure that you're checking in with them and that they're happy with the work that you're doing. There's all of this sort of administrative burden that comes with the clients that you're serving. You're doing that. It's also your marketing, your business development, your sales skills that got the deal done. And so, really people way overpay their bench. And part of that comes because it was one of the things that I thought was really important that we did in the bench workshop, was really give the script of how to approach someone so that you get out ahead of that objection. If they're normally getting paid $200 an hour in their own coaching business, they're not going to see anywhere near that when they're a bench member for you, but you have to know how to articulate it to them. How you have to get out in front before they're like, well, I charge $200. Well, wait a second. This isn't your client. This is my client, and you're a bench member for me. So you need to, it's about shifting their perspective so that they can really see just how much you're taking off their plate, and they're just doing the service delivery piece of it. They're not doing the marketing, the sales, and the client management. So there's that piece of it. We actually I had my CFO build out a calculator. So you could actually put in all sorts of numbers and kind of hit enter and see exactly what to pay your bench, because it is tricky and it varies, and it's not one number. You have to look at, how much are they doing of the project? Are they using my intellectual property or their own intellectual property? So there's all of these questions that you have to look at. And also you have to look at, what are you being paid by the client? Because their pay is a factor of that. So we actually built out a calculator this time, a really in-depth calculator, to help people figure this out. And it's really easy to use. And it wasn't easy to build, but it's easy to use.
I was going to say Mike, our CFO, did yeoman's work on that, because it was, we had put one together years ago. We put one together years ago that was really, really simplistic, and it was better than nothing. But the one that our CFO put together actually really looks at all the key critical elements you need to look at, and is a much more nuanced, fine-tuned, whatever term you want to utilize, approach to doing it. And frequently people's eyes kind of bug out when they're like, oh my gosh, like I've been like overpaying people by 30% or 50% or.
Well, actually it's a 100%. Double whammy. Usually what they find is they actually overpaid their bench,
And undercharge the client.
And they undercharge the client. They undercharge the client. They overpaid their bench. And then they're looking at that going like, well, shit, no wonder I don't like this concept, because the client gets a good deal and a great result. The bench makes all the money. And what the hell am I working for? So,
right.
So you've got to get that under there. But having the bench is really important. It gives you that collaboration. It keeps you in the chief rainmaker role so that you can be out there speaking. You can be out there building relationships. You can be out there as the thought leader, leading your movement. And you have people behind you who are delivering. The other thing I'll say about the bench tactically is that it's very different when someone is benching for your brand as opposed to being a strategic teaming alliance partner, a strategic alliance partner or a teaming alliance partner, depending on what you want to call it, but where their brand is actually going in. And again, this is all in how you choose to structure it. You're the boss. It's your client. It's your opportunity that you're giving someone. When someone's benching for you, it's under your brand. It's not, oh, I'm collaborating with this other company over here and, they're doing everything. Because then that's like, oh, well, I'll just work directly with the clients. Like, no, I'm not giving you a referral here. The opportunity is to be a bench member on my team. And I will tell you, it's not a fit for everyone.
Right.
The other thing is you build the bench, just like we said to you guys, that you have to see those larger engagements in front of you and what exactly that could look like. So you can, so your mind can really picture it so that you can create it. You have to have your bench early on because your brain will really create blind spots for you out of a protection mechanism so that you're not kind of getting yourself in over your head. Your brain's going to kind of shut down you seeing certain larger opportunities. If your subconscious doesn't know, you've already taken care of the fact that you've got 4 or 5 people kind of sitting on that bench, that the second you close that opportunity, it's not all on your own shoulders. You have people to put in. People wait way too long to build out what their big engagements look like, and then they don't build out their bench. And so we're saying to you, if you want to move out of that hourly based rate, you've got to build the engagements, and then you've got to build your bench. And then the next thing, Phil, and we'll wrap up with this today. So let me
just interject one thing on that. Sure. So what we hear from folks all the time is, well, I'll land the contract first. And then I'll find the bench. And it's like, if I had a dime for every time I've heard that over the last decade, I'd probably be able to go out and buy a new car. But that's really the cart before the horse situation. You really have to identify the bench first, because to your point, then your subconscious actually believes you that you put the pieces in place to be able to go out and do this. But I think just as important, it will also help you articulate to the client what this whole thing looks like, because you know who all your players are. And if they're just blank faces, if they're just kind of like ghosts where there's the outline of a head and that's it and there's nothing else, then it actually becomes very difficult there to effectively articulate to the client like what all the elements are, what the expertise people are bringing to the table is, and really allow you to sell it better or articulate it better so that the client can see it. So you've got to be able to see it, but you also have to be able to effectively articulate it. And the whole, I'm going to make the money first and then go find the bench members, we promise you, does not work.
Oh my gosh. And so you gave me the perfect segue again, because really the last piece of this, right, is getting to the right decision makers, okay, and being proactive, not reactive, across a couple of things here. Proactive in getting to the right decision makers and knowing how to get to those decision makers that really have the authority, if you will, to make changes in their organization, not just order up a half-day online workshop or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that as a gateway offering, but you've got to get to the right decision makers, but then you have to be proactive in those conversations. And part of being proactive is being able to talk about the royal we talk about as the royal we, that you're not having a conversation from the beginning about it being all you. And so having those bench members that you can feature and talk as the collective we shifts those conversations. But there's something else that shifts those conversations too, Phil, aside from just getting to the right decision makers. It's about not being a pizza order, taker at, Papa John's here, where they're ordering out what they need. It's about being able to really have a conversation as equals with the decision maker, and really bring to the table the possibilities that exist for them, not in a hard sales pitch, but in an education perspective. One of the things we tell our platinum clients, and all of our velocity clients for that matter, is they're only going to ask you for what they're aware of that they could even ask you for. So they have people in corporate and other organizations, they have a myopic view. They're stressed, they're busy, something's broken. They think, well, we must need a hammer, so let's go find a hammer. And they haven't done any due diligence. They don't necessarily know that, all the plumbing in their whole house is going up, and it's not a hammer issue here. They've got like massive behind the walls issues. And so if they just call up and they say, and it's so funny, I actually used a plumber analogy, Phil. I couldn't believe this. This is a really funny example, but we thought, do you know what a French drain is?
Mm-hmm.
Like a French, right? So a French drain, for those of you who don't know what that is, or you're out in a different country, you don't call it that. It's kind of like this drain in your yard that, like, when the water comes down, it like drains away from your house, but it's all underground. And ever since we bought this house, we thought our French drain was backed up because when it would rain, water would pour out of our gutters, like waterfall. It was really beautiful, and also a disaster, right? Like a disaster waiting to happen. Like, oh, look at that waterfall. That's bad. That's really bad. But it looks so pretty, but it's really bad. So we called this company in, and I said to them, our French drain is backed up. And so they're like, okay, they came out here. They're like kind of looking down. They see some water. They wanted to bring in a $5,000 piece of equipment the very next day to fix this problem. And they were really pushing on me, to do this. And something told me, don't do it. Don't do it. Later that day, a handyman was here and he goes, no, you just, like, your thing is missing up there. This like guard that's supposed to keep the water in. There's like, it's going to cost $30 to fix that. But the plumber was in this, like, I said it was the French drain, so they're going to fix the French drain without even checking. I mean, it would have cost me $5,000 instead of $30.
Well, it would have cost you a lot more than $5,000, because then they would have gone in and like, basically been trying to solve for the wrong thing and made a giant mess, and then it would have, yeah.
But that's all I knew to ask for. My problem was I saw water coming up, and I think this is my problem. And it's really the exact same thing that happens inside of companies every day. Decision makers sort of jump to conclusions about either what the problem is or what they think the right solution is. And if you don't know how to have the conversation in a different way without, one of our clients once said, the show up and throw up sales pitch, which you also don't want to do. If you don't know how to have a really engaging conversation that kind of opens up their awareness, then you typically will stay stuck in these sort of one-off delivery modes. I think that Phil, that idea of moving away from the tail wagging the dog is really one of the most important things that happens for folks when they're getting away from the hourly rate and they're creating these bigger engagements where they have their bench members, they have these sort of end-to-end ways that they can work with their clients. You can't let the tail wag the dog in these conversations. You cannot let them... You cannot be in a diminished capacity, I guess, in those conversations. You have to actually show up as the expert in the conversation, the one who knows more in the conversation versus, I'm so afraid I won't get this. I just want to close the deal. I just want to close the deal versus really standing in your power in these conversations.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are kind of wrapped up in this. And so, the first thing is, and it's actually an analogy that I'll frequently use with our platinum group, is, so I want you to imagine like a Domino's pizza, and then like, what's the finest Italian restaurant in, whatever city that you live in? So you look like Chingali in Baltimore, versus Domino's, right? So what's the experience? Like, what's the experience? What's the food like? Or like, right? And that's, and it, yes, we don't want to be dominoes. We don't want our clients to be dominoes, right? So if you get a call like, we need you to come in and do X, then instead of saying, oh, okay, let me come in and do X, then it's like, start to probe a little bit. Well, just out of curiosity, why do you feel like you need X at this particular time? Oh, that's happening. Oh, well, and then it just really getting curious and asking a couple of, some critical questions, but really coming at it from that place of, inquiry versus just like, blind acceptance of whatever they say. Really shifts significantly. And then the experience is better both for you and for the client, because it's a much different come from. And we hear from clients all the time, well, most of my clients look at me as a trainer, and to which our gentle riposte typically is, well, have you ever provided them awareness that you can do more than that, right? Have you ever actually sat down and had a discussion with them about the full, basically, suite of solutions that you can provide to other problems they may be having? And about 98% of the time, the answer is no. We find that people are operating with this unwritten, like almost invisible rule book of like who they're allowed to talk to inside the organizations, like what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. And a lot of that rule book has been basically, crafted from their experiences in corporate. If they didn't decide to work in corporate, what level they got to, because we'll find folks are really comfortable, reaching out and talking to folks that were at their level. So let's say they were a director in a division in a company, like going to directors, senior directors, maybe a VP, like that feels comfortable because that's, within 1 or 2 steps of where they were. They've had those conversations with those folks. But if you say, well, really what you need to be doing is talking to the president of a business unit, or even, for a mid-sized company, going directly to the C-suite, then people will kind of seize up, and it's like, oh, I'm not allowed to do that, and so there's just this incredible, like intricate set of unwritten, unspoken rules that we find that a lot of people are operating under. And so one of the things that we really try to do is basically burn the rule book. Like this, you are the CEO of your own business. You are allowed to do this in whatever way makes sense, for you to have the best shot at getting to the right level decision maker and having that expansive conversation that can identify what's really going on, and then provide that more robust end-to-end solution, as opposed to basically being an order taker at a Domino's pizza. And like, oh, they want a pepperoni pizza, so I'm going to deliver a pepperoni pizza, and I'm not going to talk to them about anything else. It's just going to be that pepperoni pizza.
Well, so I think part of why that happens is people are under the false, I think, perception, a really bad way of thinking about this. They think I'm only they're asking me for a workshop, or they're asking me to coach this person, so I'm going to do a great job with that, and then we'll see about doing more work with them. And I can understand how people would think that is the way to go. It is not the way to go. It is not, unequivocally, it is not the way to go. And it's not that they might not start with that thing, but you don't wait to do that thing to show them the client journey. And this is what we were talking about at the beginning when we're, helping people lay out their multi-6-figure engagements and things, is this client journey, what that looks like, what the various deliverables are, the different pieces you can bring to the table. You don't wait to educate them, because there's a concept called anchoring. And if you don't know in the beginning, and we give all of our velocity clients the scripts for how to ease into these conversations, but if you ease into the conversation so it feels very much of service to them, that you're showing them the bigger picture, now you've anchored the bigger picture. You've said, this is the big picture, not that. You've not anchored. So when you deliver just one thing, you're anchoring that you operate in this much space versus that you operate in this much space. And so it's, people are doing things that they think, at first blush make a lot of sense here, and they don't. The way that the psychology works of the decision makers and the companies and the perception that you're setting, it doesn't mean that a company won't say to you, okay, awesome. Now let's go ahead and do this thing. Let's see how that goes. And then we can move on. But at least you have created the space, the visual space, the anchoring necessary for them to see you in this broader capacity than this one thing. So I think it's just really important to understand that you need to educate your client. They're only going to ask you for what they know to ask you for. So you need to know how to have that conversation. You need to create the right anchors at the beginning of these relationships. You need to have the team available, the bench to put in to support this. And then you can take and allow the client evolution to happen. They don't necessarily have to bite off the whole elephant in the first engagement, but you've started to shift yourself into a much higher level of operating as a business owner versus that, let me just do this one thing and I'm going to charge you $5,000 for it. We see this and everything.
And so you mentioned the outset awareness, right? So that's one of the first kind of things we talked about. And you have to have that awareness as a business owner, but your prospective client also needs to have that awareness. And if they don't have an awareness on the full scope of what you can do, even if you start with a more limited scope engagement or a gateway project or something to initially kind of try you out or test you out, because that happens very frequently. If they don't have awareness on everything else that you can do, then you're really doing them a disservice, and you're doing obviously yourself and your company a disservice as well. And one of the worst feelings on the planet is to have a great relationship with it. And it's happened to me. I think, Angelique, has happened with you as well, kind of in our respective businesses in the past, is to have a client that you have a great relationship with, that you're doing good work with, find out you're in your next kind of meeting and they're like, oh, by the way, we just hired a company to do XYZ. And you're like, well, wait, I can do XYZ. Like, our company can do XYZ. And the decision maker, like, oh, I had no idea. I had no idea you could do XYZ. And that's really like a shame on us, because it was actually incumbent on us to provide the awareness through that more expansive conversation on the type of things that we can do. Because one of the adages that you preach again and again is the expert at hand is the expert who's hired. And if you're the expert at hand, but they don't know you can solve something for them, then there's no awareness and they're not going to hire you.
Yeah. I mean, I know we need to wrap up here, but I want to share this anecdote because it's so powerful. One of our clients had a very similar, it was about 2 years ago. They had a really painful experience to what you're saying. They got hired. The client was all in a rush, right? So they skipped over the process that we're always preaching to our velocity clients about. Don't let their sort of sense of panic and urgency overtake your process. You decide how clients buy from you. So you've got to always go through these steps, even when they're rushing. But at any rate, client was all in a huff about, getting started with something. So they skipped over hey, let's make sure we talk to the right decision maker. Let's make sure they really understand our full capabilities, our client journey, all the things we can do for them. So she started working on the emergency project, basically. And she was about 3 weeks into the emergency project when, and she was frustrated because she saw that they were kind of fixing this one thing, but they weren't fixing the bigger picture. But she hadn't talked to them about the bigger picture. She took the engagement that came in and she got right to it. About 3 or 4 weeks into it, her phone rings from one of her competitors. And her competitor was calling to see if she would like to be on their bench. So basically, the competitor calls and says, I've got this amazing opportunity. This company really has a major mess going on, big picture stuff here. Would you like to be on my bench? And she says, well, who is the client? It's her client. It's the client she's currently working on, and she saw the bigger issue. She had a conversation a month earlier, but was in a very reactive place to what the company was asking for. So she delivered what they asked for, even though she knew she could do more for them. They needed a lot more than this sort of one-off Band-Aid situation to be dealt with. But she was like, well, I don't want to push. I don't want to, I don't
want to be a pest.
I don't want to be a pest. I don't want to be like too salesy trying to sell them something bigger. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do a great job on this. And then I'll circle back and I'll have the higher level conversation with the higher decision maker. Meanwhile, that higher decision maker went out, didn't even know she was working with one of the VPs, went out, found the competitor, talked to them, did a whole sales conversation, and now the competitor was getting the bigger opportunity and she had the opportunity to bench. That was like, when I heard that, I was so upset on behalf of our client that had happened. But that's the kind of shit that can happen if you're not understanding how to have these conversations. Having the right language, I think, is a big part. It's not usually often people's unwillingness to do it, Phil. It's so often that they just haven't ever been given the language. And obviously, any of the stuff from the online marketing world just doesn't work in those environments. You can't say, well, if you sign up today, you get $500 off. I mean, it's just, that language.
If you sign up today, we've got these 5 bonuses that you can get if you sign up before 5 p.m. today. That doesn't work in corporate land.
That doesn't work in corporate. So, those are all. So as you guys are thinking about, my producer's going to yell at me, we went a little long today, but as you're thinking about going from, that one-on-one space, doing the one-on-one coaching, or you're thinking about, how do I break out of that hourly rate? First, you've got to envision what these bigger engagements look like. You really need to nail that down. And those bigger engagements need to bring all of your past experience, all of your capabilities to the table. And they need to be designed also from the best way to help your clients achieve the impacts that they're looking to achieve. And then you need to build out your bench, because you probably aren't going to do this on your own. You're going to also have a much more rewarding experience if you have other smart people that you can bring in if and when you need them. It's going to be really fun for you. And it also makes you more excited. You get your energy back in your business. You don't feel so drained all the time. And then the third piece of it is understanding how to have a different level conversation with clients versus being that, person on the other end of the pizza delivery place, just kind of delivering what they're asking for, versus really being able to co-create and cultivate those bigger opportunities that allow you to do the kind of work that is so rewarding, so full of, significance, fulfillment. That's really what you're capable of doing. And it feels damn good, by the way. It feels like damn good when you're doing some of the projects that our clients have worked on are just so exciting, and just the fire in their belly and the energy that it gives them when they're not just doing kind of, grinding it out, but they're building things and creating things with companies that are going to impact hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of employees, or affect the marketplace, affect the community that they operate in, affect the environment. Our clients are doing, leading movements that are about improving the health of our environment, uplifting communities, working with students, helping employees have a great experience, having customers have a great experience. So these are really things, Phil, that, I know for you and I, it's so rewarding as we kind of get in the weeds with our clients to help them figure this out, really customized to their own business. So I don't say this probably often enough. So thank you, Phil, for being a part of our team at the Corporate Agent for a decade now. And
thank you for creating the Corporate Agent for me to be a part of. So it's a ton of fun, and love our clients. The folks that come to work with us are, they're really, they got a ton of heart. They really want to make an impact. They're super smart, and most of them are so accomplished. They've done really amazing things, and it's just a matter of kind of, pulling all that stuff out of their backpack and rearranging it a little bit, and then presenting it in a new way that can make the shift and make all the difference between them. Just as you said, kind of grinding it out with that eat what you kill, feast or famine, just what you can do with your own efforts, and take it into something that's more significant. And some of our clients just really want to, they want a really small bench, and just a couple folks that they're calling in, and they're not looking to build an empire, but we've got a lot of folks that really do want to, and frankly have the capacity to be empire builders, and they just don't know how to do it.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree. It's really an amazing thing to see what these business owners are doing and how they're getting their work out there in a big way. All right, everybody. So I just want to say thank you again for joining us here on Lead Your Movement. I hope you're taking some things away to really help you break free, because if you are going to lead your movement, you're probably not going to do it all by yourself, and you need to have revenue coming in, and you need to have some space in your business to allow you to lead your movement. A couple of just quick programming notes. This was a pre-recorded episode while I'm taking my so-called vacation this year. But if the things that we're talking about today are the types of things that you've been wondering about in your own business, I do invite you to stop by our main website, thecorporateagent.com. In fact, you can go to thecorporateagent.com /schedule to schedule a team with a call with our team, a call with our team. If you do want to understand more about the types of programs that we offer here at the Corporate Agent, including our platinum groups of 10 to 12 folks. We have a group starting right after Labor Day here in the United States. And we're getting pretty full with that group because it is small. It's led by Phil, and it's part of our overall global community of Velocity as well. It's just an amazing program. So if you're looking to break free of that one-on-one work or that hourly work, that's really the program where you get the customized support all year long, including a private strategy day with Phil, done virtually, of course, in this pandemic world. So go ahead and stop by thecorporateagent.com. Also, if you're watching us over on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any of our future episodes. And we have some phenomenal guests coming up showing us how they are leading their movement. Until next time, everybody, this is Angelique and Phil signing off. Have a great day.